Hello there folks, my name is Spoonks and welcome back to another episode of Box Office Chat. This is the show where I break down the top 5 domestic box office results, see where each movie landed, and see how well each movie did, so let's get started. Number 5 was Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, making $6.4 million this weekend, bringing its domestic total to $178 million and its worldwide total to $540 million. So it has finally done it, ladies and gentlemen. It has finally surpassed the domestic total of Dead Reckoning. Job well done. This was the goal. This was the achievement it so desperately needed to get by. It was a slow journey, but hey, we got there while it was in the top 5 nonetheless. And also it's about to surpass the domestic total of the first Mission Impossible film, and is also 10 million away from surpassing Thunderbolts to become the second biggest film of the summer, until How to Train Your Dragon squeaks by that. But I digress. Yeah, this movie has had quite the rebound. It hasn't been as fast as I think many of us were hoping it would be, but it certainly has enjoyed a nice bounce back after the disappointment of the previous installment and that second weekend drop off being a bit heftier than what was expected. Again, this is still going to be quite the money loser again. Biggest enemy was the budget, but this is still a really strong performer, still holding well, maintaining its core audience. If it can keep going at the rate it's going, I think it'll land safely in between Rogue Nation and Ghost Protocol for sure, at least domestically. Worldwide, it has surpassed the $500 million milestone and is now just roughly $20 million away from surpassing Dead Reckoning, which I think it will be able to surpass worldwide by the end of this week. Yeah, really solid turnout for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Sure, it's not where it really needs to be, but then again, I don't think anyone was expecting it to reach those heights. But this is still a really solid performance. I can't see anyone being really that upset over these numbers, because while it's not going to be a hit in the traditional sense, it is still going to be a relatively solid performer for sure. Number 4 was Lilo and Stitch, making $9.7 million this weekend, bringing its domestic total to $386 million and its worldwide total to $910 million. So I thought we would see a steeper drop off for this movie, given that there was another big kids movie this weekend, but no, it actually put up a good fight. It only dropped 38% from last weekend. Really impressive. It shows that there is still interest for this movie. People still want to see Stitch's wacky antics on the big screen, and because of that, it is now less than 15 million away from the $400 million milestone domestically. I think it's gonna barely get past that milestone, despite the fact that it's holding well. I do think it's slowing down a bit. I think the hype is definitely starting to lose steam after a while. Again, there's 2 new big kids movies out right now that are gonna take all of this movie's attention for sure. And on the worldwide side of things, I think we're gonna see a similar case to Minecraft, where it just misses the $1 billion mark. Still an impressive sum of total, especially for a $100 million movie, but it just doesn't seem like it's gonna get there. Maybe it'll get lucky and barely get over it like Moana 2, but I think it's starting to slow down. Still though, mighty fine performance for Lilo and Stitch. Still the biggest movie of the summer. It's going to hold on to that record for a while, at least until one of the big July movies surpasses it. I still think at least one of those movies is going to surpass this movie for big movie of the summer. But still though, really solid, strong performance for Lilo and Stitch. Not much more else to say here except bravo. Number 3 was Elio, opening with $20 million this weekend domestically and $34 million worldwide. This is the second biggest opening for an animated film this year. It topped King of Kings, The Day the Earth Blew Up, and The Night of the Zoopocalypse, but still sits behind Dogman. It is the 6th biggest opening for a family film, topping Paddington Peru and the aforementioned 3 other animated films, but still sits behind Dogman, Snow White, How to Train Your Dragon, Lilo and Stitch, and a Minecraft movie. It is the 8th biggest opening of the summer, topping Karate Kid Legends and The Materialist, but still sitting behind Ballerina, a certain other movie we'll get to very soon, Final Destination, Mission Impossible, Thunderbolts, How to Train Your Dragon, and Lilo and Stitch. And it is Pixar's lowest opening ever, lower than Elemental, lower than the first Toy Story. Yeah, this is There's no other way around it. This is a very bad opening. I was a bit optimistic. I was hoping this would overperform and defy the odds a bit. It's the first animated film in a while. It's summer. Maybe there would be a lot of interest. It's a Pixar movie, but clearly there just wasn't that much interest with this. I don't think the marketing really sold the movie well. They didn't do all the cool cross promotional stuff until way too late into the marketing, I believe. And I think there just wasn't a lot of interest with this movie. Unfortunately, again, I saw a buzz with it, but it was mostly within the animation Disney Pixar community. Nothing really with the general audience. And obviously, opening in the wake of How to Train Your Dragon didn't do any favors. Although, to be fair, it was really supposed to come out the same weekend in How to Train Your Dragon. But I digress. Yeah, this is a very disappointing opening. I wish it would have done a bit better. If you saw my review, you know that I really enjoyed this, and obviously for like original movies, this is definitely not a good sign. And on a budget of $150 million, it's going to need all the help it can get. With that said, though, there are some silver linings. This does not guarantee that it's going to be out of the woods. Again, I could be wrong, but there are two major things with this movie that I could see it turning the ship around with this movie. First off, it is still the only animated movie out right now. It's going to be the only one until Smurfs in mid-July. I think that's plenty of time. I think it'll be able to stand out amongst the sea of the big like summer blockbusters this summer. So there's that. And reception towards the film has been very positive. Critics have been enjoying it. It's in the mid 80s on Rotten Tomatoes, and audiences have also been really enjoying it. It got an A on Cinema Score, on par with some of the best received family films this year: Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, Paddington, Dogman, and even on par with the most recent Pixar movies, Inside Out 2 and Elemental. So we could see some very solid legs here. This is not uncommon for Pixar. Obviously, Elemental started rough, but then it quickly rebounded. And even Illumination had something similar with Migration that had an even worse opening than this, but was also able to quickly rebound. So there's a possibility this could turn the ship around, bounce back. Hopefully that is the case. I've seen a lot of positive reactions coming from this movie on Twitter and TikTok, so maybe it has that word of mouth, maybe it has that momentum. But as far as its opening, yeah, this is very concerning. This is definitely not what they wanted to see for this movie. They were hoping for definitely something better than what Elemental got, especially after the huge phenomenon that Inside Out 2 was last year. So yeah, in terms of its opening, this is bad. Definitely not what they wanted to see. But hopefully, like, again, this does not guarantee anything, but hopefully it's able to rebound and gain those family movie legs we have seen with stuff like Migration and Elemental. So this one's just going to be one we're going to have to keep our eyes on. I don't want to write it off just yet because of the silver linings I mentioned, but I can see why some people are already writing it off because, again, this is a pretty bad start for this movie, unfortunately. Number 2 was 28 Years Later, opening with $30 million this weekend domestically and $60 million worldwide. This is the third biggest opening for a horror film this year. It tops The Monkey and Wolfman, but still sits behind Sinners and Final Destination Bloodlines, and it is the sixth biggest opening of the summer, topping Ballerina, Elio, Karate Kid Legends, and The Materialists, but still sits behind Final Destination, Mission Impossible, Thunderbolts, How to Train Your Dragon, and Lilo and Stitch. So while it didn't reach the heights a lot of people were expecting it to, some people were saying it was going to challenge Final Destination's big opening, but I'd still say this is a really solid debut, certainly the biggest in the 28 franchise, however you phrase it, but yeah, certainly bigger than the previous two. Again, I think like with Final Destination to a smaller degree, of course, but similar to that film, the longevity and the impact those films had and the fan base has definitely grown since the original movies came out, and there was certainly a lot of interest with this movie, for sure. Again, the trailers were very popular. I think where it just missed the mark was just the marketing wasn't as big. They didn't do anything big or grand with the marketing like we saw with Final Destination, so that kind of caused it to fall short of expectations. But this is still a very solid debut, and on a budget of $60 million, it's already made that back worldwide. It's sure to make that back domestically by the end of this week. Yeah, a very solid debut. However, there is one problem, and that is the reception the movie has had. Critics enjoyed it all right enough. Like Elio, last I checked, it was in the mid 80s, but audiences, they're not too satisfied with this. It got a B on Cinema Score. That's not bad for a horror movie, but compared to some other stuff, obviously it's under Sinners, but even stuff like Final Destination and Companion, it's under what they got. Those movies got B pluses. It appears some people weren't as satisfied with this movie. I've heard some very negative things about the ending of the film, so I think this mixed reception is probably gonna hurt it a little bit. Add on to the fact that there is another big horror sequel coming out this weekend, and I'm curious to see how those two will battle it out against each other. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where this legs out, if it's front loaded, if it falls heavily, or if it really holds well and makes a name for itself. But this is still a really strong debut. I can't see anybody being upset really over how this movie opened. Yeah, a really solid opening for 28 years later. And finally, let's end the video off with the number one movie of the weekend, which was once again How to Train Your Dragon, making $36 million this weekend, bringing its domestic total to $160 million and its worldwide total to $357 million. So while on the steeper end of dropping offs, it fell 57%, which was admittedly a lot steeper than I expected it to fall. I'll touch a bit on that later. This movie's still doing really well. I'm sure it's still going to be the biggest film in the franchise. It's already surpassed the third film's entire domestic run, and on the worldwide side of things, it's on its way to surpassing the first film's entire worldwide run. This is a very solid performance we've been seeing here. The word of mouth is really strong, and on the domestic side of things, it's just 40 million away from surpassing 200 million domestically. All good said and done, but the thing about this weekend is that it did almost fall 60%, similar to Lilo and Stitch, and that movie at least had the excuse of it was Memorial Day weekend when it first came out. Not as many people were going to the movies the following weekend. So I think what we're seeing here is that with these live action remakes, they're starting to be really front loaded. The fan rushes for that first weekend, and then it just loses steam on the second weekend. So I think going forward, that's just gonna have to be what we accept with these live action remakes. They're performing less like family films and more just like the average blockbuster. Really solid openings, but then some pretty steeper than expected drop-offs. I'm sure this will be able to bounce back. Again, the word of mouth has been very positive. The reception has been really strong thus far. It will be interesting to see how it competes with the other big blockbusters. I mean, a lot of movies are going to be stealing those premium large format screens these coming weeks, so it'll be interesting to see if it can maintain solid holds amongst those, but I still think it's gonna put up a good fight. Again, this is still a kids movie, and I think a lot of families are gonna still be interesting to go check it out. Obviously, it was the big family film this week. Yeah, still doing well despite a much steeper drop off than expected. And those were the top 5 domestic box office results for this weekend, but we're not quite done yet, as we've got another week ahead of us and new movies hitting theaters. This weekend we got another 2 big wide releases hitting theaters this weekend, starting with Megan 2.0. That's right, the follow-up to the surprise hit that was the first Megan. This time there's another rogue evil robot going on a killing spree, so the only way to stop it is really just to bring Megan back. That's right, we're pulling a Terminator 2 with this one. Now, I could see this one having a pretty good opening, all things considered. The marketing has been pretty fun, pretty entertaining. I've been seeing a lot of stuff for it. They just recently did a Megan lookalike contest in New York, which was pretty fun, and they're really leaning into the silliness and the persona of Megan with the advertising. The buzz seems to be there, sort of. I'll touch a bit on that later, but I do see people talking about it, certainly. And again, it's the new horror movie. Not just that, but also the horror movie sequel, and that's been doing really well, especially this summer. That's all good said and done. The problem, though, is just I'm not seeing the hype that I saw with the first one. I touched a bit on it just recently, but while I do see people talking about it, it's not as big as The first one, I just don't see the hype or as much people talking about this one as they did with the first one. It feels like it's kind of just been there, done that with this one, unfortunately. So I think we could see, maybe best case scenario, I could see that this does another Smile 2 where it doesn't turn out the same as the first one. It doesn't capture that lightning in the bottle, but it still does relatively well given the budget and how it legs out, because again, I still think the marketing has been pretty good, and you know, horror has just been dominating right now. I don't see this movie doing any different, so I think we're gonna see at least a decent opening here. I could be wrong, but I think we could see at least a pretty good opening here. And then there's F1, the latest from Joseph Kosinski, director of Top Gun Maverick. It's about two racers facing off in one of the biggest sporting racing events out there, Formula One. I think this one's gonna be, in a similar case to Twisters, one of the bigger surprises of the summer for sure. It's one of the few adult films out right now geared towards an older audience, more dramatic. The marketing has been excellent. Believe it or not, this is the Warner Brothers movie that got the Super Bowl commercial, not Superman, this one. But yeah, I've been seeing tons and tons of promos. Obviously, the stars have been making appearances during the Formula One races, and there's the tie-in with KFC of all things. The buzz seems to be strong with this one. I've been seeing a lot of people talk about it, getting interested in it. I don't think it's going to be another Lilo and Stitch or anything, but I could see some Mission Impossible numbers, some really strong debut numbers here. So yeah, I have hope for this one. I think it's going to surprise some people. I think we could see a really solid opening with F1. But we'll see how well this movie truly does, as well as the rest of the movies that land in the top 5 on the next Box Office Chat. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Box Office Chat. What did you all think of the results? Were you satisfied, unsatisfied? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.